All right, please welcome Sara Lucey of Alaska DOT to this Alaska TTAP webinar presentation, and she is presenting today on safe ice roads for Alaska. Take it away, Sara.
Perfect. Thank you, Vicki. Thanks for having me today. Like Vicki said, I'm Sara Lucey. I'm the planning manager here at Northern Region DOT, based out of Fairbanks. And I'm here to talk to you today about a program that is relatively new to the Alaska Department of Transportation, and we call it SIRA, or Safe Ice Roads for Alaska. I'm not an ice roads expert. Most of my experience comes from snow machining on lakes or hearing about people falling through the Chena River every spring in the newspaper. But I do have a background in program management, so it's been a privilege to help roll out this program on behalf of DOT. So we're gonna cover a few things today. Vicki has graciously given me about an hour, and so I have a few things to cover. Normally I do a broad overview of the program, but we're going to do a deep dive today into different aspects of the program, funding, eligibilities, the programmatic process. This program is unique to us here at DOT in a few different ways, and that makes it slightly more complicated, but nonetheless impactful. So we'll go over a few of those things. So what is the SIRA program? Well, this program was fostered by the new infrastructure bill known as IIJA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which was implemented in November of 2021. The bill brought many changes to eligibilities, and one of which was our Surface Transportation Block Program, which is a funding program through federal highways. And under 23 USC section 133K 1A, I've got the picture of that here. You'll see that it now reads that maintenance activities on roads functionally classed as rural minor collectors or local roads, ice roads, or seasonal roads are now eligible for federal funding under this STBG program. So this was a transition for the state of Alaska, but also a learning curve for US DOT and the Federal Highways Administration, also known as FHWA. Funding ice roads was a new concept, and nothing had been done had been released on guidance yet. And the department here at DOT worked closely with FHWA for months to revise and communicate eligibilities in order to release this as a program for federal funding in the state of Alaska. And you'll see Alaska was the first state to utilize this under the new Title 23 eligibility. So that was very exciting for us. Also, there was a learning curve. And so what it came of it was SIRA, or the Safe Ice Roads program, and the opportunity for communities to apply for federal funding to maintain their ice roads. So last year was our inaugural season of the program. The program kicked off fall of last year, and due to program setup and determinations that needed to be made, it was released a little bit later in the fall. And so we had a slow and steady kickoff. We ran our first round of applications and scoring, and out of 15 applications, we were able to fund 13. The others were not funded. The other two weren't funded because they overlapped with other applications. And so that was one of the stipulations when we took in applications, was that we couldn't have any overlap in ice road maintenance. So community A could not overlap with community B on their ice road. And so those two communities that were not funded were actually, their ice road was funded, but through another community that did the work. So we just wanted to make sure there wasn't duplicacy there. Out of the 13 communities who were awarded funding, the estimated funding would assist with about 1,300 miles of ice road in the state. The unfortunate part of last season that we only had 4 communities that submitted reimbursement requests. So we, of course, followed up with communities at the end of the season this year and said, what happened? What did you think of the program? What can we do better? And a lot of the feedback that we got was that there was a lot of turnover in positions, so it was keeping up on the paperwork there, and that the program needed a lot of backup documentation that wasn't well outlined. And so they suggested a guidebook. And so DOT responded, and we now have a guidebook on our website about the process regarding the program. And hopefully the communities and applicants will find that helpful and familiar after this presentation. So we'll go over that in a little bit too. And to help those communities out who felt the burden of the paperwork last year, we have also extended the funding for those communities that were unable to use their funding last year have been extended into this upcoming season. So we hope that communities will take advantage of that. So it is important to note that this award is for funding through reimbursement and not a lump sum payment to complete the project. This means that awardees are required to complete and document the maintenance and operations of the ice road and provide all required documentation to us here at DOT to receive an adequate reimbursement for all eligible maintenance and operation activities related to the program. So this is a big part of the program, and what makes it so complicated is that the communities are the ones doing the work. DOT is overseeing the Title 23 funding and making sure eligibilities are covered through that federal funding and reporting back to FHWA on those activities that were performed. And that means we need a lot of backup documentation, and we need specific backup documentation. And so that was sort of a hardship last year that we had to work through with several communities regarding what kind of reimbursement backup documentation was eligible and what was informational. And so we worked very closely with a lot of communities to do that this year. And so we feel like we have a much better process going into this season, and we're very excited about that. There will be approximately $4 million available for the program this fiscal year. And all projects require a 9.03% local match. Applicants have the option to provide cash match or the match covered through in-kind service. So we have the option 1 and option 2 sort of laid out here. The cash match option is the community or entity providing a check to DOT saying, here's our cash match, and then we reimburse invoices at 100% to the community. Option 2 is in-kind service. So as work is performed in the community, they send us an invoice and say we performed maintenance and operations on this section of the road for this long using this piece of equipment, and we will reimburse them at 90.97%, because 9.03% of that invoice will be taken on as responsibility of the community as in-kind service. So you'll get the same reimbursement amount no matter which option you go, but it's cash and cash flow for your community and what works best for you. So we have both of those options, and we're happy to walk through them and what they look like with communities as they have questions, or applicants who are interested in the program. We're happy to talk about those. So let's talk about eligible activities. Some specific eligible activities are listed here, but we wanted to note that the eligible activities only cover non-ground disturbing activities and no impacts to the water column. And this is because we have not performed a full environmental assessment on each of the areas for the applications. Those environmental assessments would take anywhere 6 months to a year, if not longer, depending on land area and impacts that the ice road or seasonal road is on. So we have asked that those not be reimbursable, and they are not considered eligible activities. So ground disturbing, meaning if you're touching the ground at all, if there's any impact to the tundra or to the water column, and not using water column to repair cracks and that sort of thing. So if you have specific questions about those, our office is available to answer. But eligible activities look like things like planning. This could be route planning, selecting operation level, determining signage requirements, surveying, which is manual surveying or ground penetrating radar surveying, route selection. This is selecting a route to construct access points, safety aspects, ice road establishment, so preparing travel lanes, snow clearing, ice strengthening and surveying, signage, construction signs, entry signs, regulatory and advisory signs. And please feel free to ask us about signage as well. DOT is very familiar with signage. Monitoring, so visual inspection, traffic control, and updated signage. Administration, so this is controlling loads and speeds, safety and training, but this does not cover administrative type activities like billing and office work and that sort of thing. So it has to be very specific to the training or the ice road operations. And then of course, shutdown. Closing the ice road to public use is a huge concern for our office, mainly because of the safety aspect of it and the communication with and coordination of your community with users of that ice road. So those are all eligible activities. Other ineligible activities we have listed on our website and in our guidebook. Equipment purchases are unfortunately not part of our eligible activities at the moment, nor are any permanent trail markings on the land or undocumented project charges. So we review these reimbursement requests very closely to make sure that they line up with all of these eligible activities. And again, these are lined out in our guidebook pretty specifically, and we're happy to expand on any questions. We left plenty of open space in the application for folks to explain their ice road activities. So if they have questions about certain activities, or they see that their activity isn't listed here on this general list, then they can put it in their application and we can help assess that and determine if it's eligible for the program funding or not. So here's some pictures of some eligible activities. We've got ice radar, we've got night markers, looking at tidal overflow in Bethel, and just a shout out to Mark Leary in the Piamute for these photos. They have done a really great job of documenting their process, and Mark's got a killer presentation on ice roads and using them and constructing them. So I definitely recommend if you get a chance to see that, I would do that. Mark's been great to work with, and has been really helpful in my office, letting us know how the ice road program works and how important it is to their community. So thank you to him for that. But yep, see, these are some of the pictures of what eligible activities could look like. So resources that are available for the program, we've got a criteria listing that's found on our website. We now have a guidebook. The big picture here is what the cover of our guidebook looks like. The Design and Operations Ice Road Manual is written and published by the University of Alaska Fairbanks. The Institute of Northern Engineering has written this wonderful manual and guide to ice road program of the design and operations of building ice roads and reviewing safety features of it. So we highly recommend reviewing that and understanding that for your operators on the ice road. And it's nice to know for staff as well. Vicky's shop puts on the ice road workshop occasionally, and I highly recommend that anybody who's interested in being part of the ice road program or construction and maintenance attend one of those and really do a deep dive into information regarding ice roads with Billy Connor. And UAF, the Institute of Northern Engineering, has released an app of the manual. So this is very exciting. I've got a slide later on that. And resources available at your area planners. And we'll go over that in just a minute. So I wanted to walk through the guidebook first. We created this to walk applicants through the process. Like I said earlier, it was identified as a need for the program. And so we spent time this summer working on this guidebook to outline details of the program. And so you're looking here at the table of contents. That would be a basic outline of what this guidebook looks like. And again, that can be found online. We're hoping to keep updating it as we go if folks have questions or if we need clarification. So I definitely recommend if you're reading through this and think, wow, like this doesn't quite make sense, or I have follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to my office or any of the area planners and let us know that there are gaps or holes or misunderstandings, or you have follow-up questions, and we're happy to address those as we go into it. But we really were hoping to sort of create a to-do list and a checklist for applicants to better communicate to everyone what we were expecting here in our office as far as reimbursement requests, and also describe the process itself, getting the applications in, scoring the projects, and awarding. Another resource I mentioned was the Ice Road Manual. So kudos to Billy Connor and his team for this. The Ice Road Manual app is quite handy. He did a demo of it in the last workshop they did in August, and you're able to go through and calculate ice thickness and recommended safety features, as you know, like vehicle weights with your ice thickness and the algorithm there, and the app does it for you. So you can enter in how thick your ice is in a certain spot, how heavy your vehicle is, and it'll give you a safety rating. So kudos to Billy and his team of folks that have put out the Ice Roads Manual and the app.
Can I interject for a moment there, Sarah?
Yeah, Vicki, go ahead.
Anybody can approach, contact me, and I can send you an electronic version of the Ice Roads Manual. It's also available online in ScholarWorks, which is the UAF document repository, and I'm working on making it available through the Alaska TTAP website, but it is not yet there. The app has been, a beta version of the app has been posted and is available through the Apple App Store. However, it's still a little rough, and some of the initial verbiage that the student intern who was posting it for us put in there is not accurate description of the app currently, but we're in the process of changing that. And I will be sending out an announcement once the finalized version is available on the App Store. I will send out the announcement, to the mailing list for the TTAP. So if you got an email about this webinar, you'll get an email when the app is good to go and available from the Apple Store.
Great, thanks, Vicki. Yeah, I did do a screenshot. I downloaded the app the other day just to play with it. And that little icon, the UAF INE AKT tab, is the icon that you're looking for if you're searching for it. It is called the INE Ice Road Manual as of right now, but it sounds like there might be some adjustments to the description and stuff. So
yes, the name is going to be changing. That's just was a temporary name. It's going to be Safe Ice Roads.
Wonderful.
It will be the name of the app.
Great. Thanks, Vicki. Okay, so we also have a link to this PDF on our programmatic website about Sierra because we want to keep referring folks back to it. I think a heads up to applicants for this year, we asked applicants to calculate their gold formula, and that is described in this Ice Roads manual in depth, and it is just a calculation of awareness of ice road thickness and your vehicles and the type of equipment that you'll be using out on the ice and how heavy that is. So we're looking to make sure that folks have read this ice road manual, that they understand the safety behind ice road thickness and balancing all of these variables to make sure that the ice road is safe for use. And the last resource we wanted to cover was your DOT&PF area planners. So my office is in Fairbanks, and we have 3 regional offices: Anchorage, Fairbanks, and Juneau. And each of these offices has a small staff of planners. So these planners are responsible for planning activities in their region and in their area. And they're responsible for rolling out programs that we have, our state programs and some of our federal programs. So we are constantly in contact with our communities, and we hope to foster those good relationships to make sure that communities know about opportunities like the Ice Roads program. And or if you have questions about the Ice Roads program, you can reach out to your respective area planner to ask them any of those questions. And if they need to, they'll reach out to myself or our project manager, Kenny Gallagher. So the documentation process, this information focuses on how DOT will be prepared for like the outreach and processing of each step of the Sierra process. The application is live now. So that is on our website, and we have an online portal. After the application, we move into scoring and then to award, and then the memorandum of agreement, or an MOA, the limited waiver of sovereign immunity if it's applicable, and the reimbursement rate per mile are all things that are in the immediate future for applicants and awardees. So we'll go into these in a little bit more detail. So the application itself is now online. The top left corner is what our website looks like. You'll see the blue buttons there. The Sierra application will take you to this next picture, which is our online portal. We did put a couple of links as reference materials here. There's a PDF format if you want to download the PDF format, say you have bad internet, or you just want to pre-fill out the application so you know what's coming because it's got a couple of pages. You can do that. We also have our program webpage in case you lost track of that on the way to this application. The criteria guidance is also there. We highly recommend reviewing the criteria guidance. It is how we judge and score the applications. So taking a look at that before you fill out the application is highly recommended. And then a link, of course, to the Ice Road manual we just talked about. The far right picture is the PDF version of the application, just in case you need it. So our for the 23-24 season, our application deadline is October 20th. We announced the call for projects last week, and so we're trying to give folks about a month and a half to fill out applications. We didn't want to run into hunting season, and we wanted to give folks time to talk it over and decide on their routes for the year. And an application is required to receive funding for the year. So the scoring criteria is also on our website. The program has 5 criteria listed: safety, economic benefits, health and quality of life, access to air service, and contributing factors. So the criteria evaluation process lets the department select the projects while considering all 5 of these aspects, and each of the aspects has a different weight associated with it. The little clip that I have as a picture there is economic benefits, and it gives you an idea of how these are scored. So if the project, for economic benefits as an example, if the project significantly enhances economic development in the area by supporting subsistence living, providing access to employment or public facilities, supporting movement of freight, or connecting communities, it would get 4 to 5 points. And there is a little bit of a range there because it lets our project evaluation board rate based on emphasis, need, scale of need. And so the points are assigned through our 5 project evaluation board members. The PEB, which we also call the PEB. The PEB is made up of members representing various knowledge and ice roads and community relations around the state. And the PEB refers to this criteria guidance when scoring project nominations to help with consistent and fair scores. If a project is missing information in a category or not explained or it's ambiguous, the PEB member may follow up with the community for more information. PEB members follow the criteria to assign the scores for each project, and flexibility is built in there. So the scoring will take place November 1st through the 3rd of this season. And that group of 5 folks will get together, we'll review all the applications and score them based on the criteria in the criteria guidance. And of course, we're always taking feedback on things. So if you take a look at the criteria guidance and you have questions, please let us know. And those can be found on our website. Project award and project starts. So applicants will be notified by or before November 15th of their status. After the project evaluation board scores them, discusses them, and comes up with their final list, commissioner approves for us. And if awarded project funding, the following need to be completed. So the MOA we mentioned earlier, limited waiver of sovereign immunity if the entity is a tribe, and reimbursement rate per mile. We'll go into that in just a minute. The documentation will be sent to the Federal Highway Administration for approval and notice to proceed. This is very important to this step. Communities cannot start invoicing for reimbursement until after the NTP has been issued. So that NTP is a very important date for us because even though you filled out the MOA, it does not mean that we have a notice to proceed from FHWA to use federal funding. And we need that from them before we can work with you to reimburse funds for work that was done. And we can only, from that NTP date forward, is all that we can reimburse for. So if you did work in January, but your NTP date was February 1st, we can't reimburse you for things in January. So that's very important. It's also very key when we start pushing out these award letters, we're also going to start pushing very quickly these MOAs and the reimbursement rate per mile worksheet to get this information calculated and done and sent over to FHWA to make sure that we get that notice to proceed date as soon as possible, and preferably before you start construction of the ice road for the season. So awards will be announced by or before November 15th. And we'll obviously contact applicants either way, if awarded or not, but we hope we can make haste after that to get all the paperwork done. The reimbursement rate per mile was that last piece. The reimbursement rate per mile is a formula devised to help with operational expenses. So Sierra funding does not directly cover routine equipment storage. It doesn't cover equipment maintenance, depreciation, or fueling expenses directly. So this reimbursement rate per mile is a formula that includes all of those things calculated into one number. So part of the work that we did this summer and this spring was to create this formula and this reimbursement rate per mile worksheet So communities could come in and they tell us, what is the average fuel cost in your area? The miles of ice road that you plan to maintain this year, the number of days the ice road is typically maintained. And then we need information on vehicles or equipment that is used to maintain the ice road. And so from that information, we're going to calculate depreciation. And I believe in there, we have storage cost and miles per gallon and all of that information under each vehicle section. So within this worksheet, we're going to gather all the variables we need to calculate that reimbursement rate per mile. Once we have that, and typically it's been a couple $100s per mile, right? Let's just say it's different depending on the community and the type of equipment they have and how much the fuel expenses are. But let's say it's $300 per mile. And if that's the case, we're going to use that when we expense and request reimbursement via an invoice. And we're going to use that figure. So we'll go into that in a little bit. So documentation during the season, and I thought I was being funny with that graphic. It is a lot of paperwork. So apologies in advance. And that's why we have a team of people here to work with you on it. So the first thing we're going to get is that notice to proceed from FHWA. And again, that's that date. You cannot bill for expenses or operational costs or maintenance costs before that date. And we will email you exactly when we have that date. And from then on, please feel free to include any eligible work on your reimbursement requests after that date. The documentation for reimbursement, that's going to look like timesheets, work logs, inspection logs, photos, and GPS coordinates of your ice road. All of these things are good backup documentation for FHWA when we turn in this packet to say this is the work that we've done with the federal dollars that we received. We need all this information to back that up. Once the reimbursement request has hit our desk, DOT reviews for eligible activities, and we run through this reimbursement request to see what you were asking for and what work was done with this federal funding. Reimbursement summary is provided back to the community for review, and we sign it, you sign it, and then it's routed to our finance department for processing, and they will issue you a check for the reimbursement rate. So the reimbursement documentation, we want to be very clear this year that we've provided some logs, some inspection logs, some time cards, and we want to make sure that folks have all the information they need to do this, and provide you with some tools to do it. So if there was any confusion or you were kind of wondering what to use or how to use it, we have information available to do that. Photos are really helpful for us as well. We're not always able to get out for inspections, and so we hope that by getting photo documentation, we can send that to FHWA to say this is what was produced with that federal funding. Mileage documentation is going to be huge for FHWA. Our federal funding for our capital projects is normally tracked by GPS mile points or location mile points. And so like any other federal project, that's what we're reporting back to them is federal points of an ice road. So we ask that that is tracked as well. And then we recommend submitting invoices frequently. You can submit them once a week. You can submit them every 2 weeks. You can submit them quarterly. I know offices are very busy, and so we recommend submitting as frequently as you can. We obviously in our office, the shorter the amount of volume of an invoice, it's easier for us to process. So we recommend every 2 weeks, but that's not always feasible for communities. So we understand. And we're going to communicate with communities early on this season to ask what their ideal reimbursement schedule would be like. And we want to make sure that we're scheduling sessions to help work through reimbursement documentation and any questions that might arise. So reimbursement calculations, we would like reimbursements to be laid out in 2 different sections, one of them being personnel and the other one being operations. And so we'll send you a reimbursement spreadsheet that will cover personnel like operating equipment, performing safety operations, planning, training, shutdown work. All of those things can be classified hourly as personnel. And that's how much you pay your personnel hourly. So we need to see timesheets for that. We need to see that Bob makes $40 an hour and he performed safety operations today. He went out and inspected the ice road and for this many hours on this section of road. and how much that really would cost you. That all goes on this invoice request, or it's equipment mileage that was performed. So maintenance needed for safety or maintenance in general that was done on the ice road. So if somebody's running a grader back and forth, we just need to know how many miles they went that day. And remember that reimbursement rate per mile spreadsheet. We're going to use that. And if they did 15 miles that day, great, it's 15 miles times that reimbursement rate amount. And that's how much is going to be invoiced. So again, we have quite a walkthrough of this, and we have various documents that we're going to send, and we're going to work with communities to walk through this. If it sounds overwhelming, it's not too bad once we get into it. And I think we had several communities this last season. I think we ran them through the templates a couple of times, and after that it was okay. And we sort of gained a very consistent footing on how to submit reimbursements and then how to get reimbursed quickly. So we're available for that. And we understand this is quite a paperwork burden for your office. So we want to make sure that we have good communication with you and are answering any questions as they arise. So for the 23-24 season, our program timeline looks like this. Our call for projects went out September 5th and is going through October 20th. That deadline is October 20th. Evaluation and scoring the first week in November. Award announcement would be middle of November. And after that, we're going to hit the ground running with paperwork. So again, we want to make sure that you know this is not a lump sum payment, it's reimbursement only. And all projects require that 9.03% local match, whether it's via a check or if it's in-kind service. So that was the bulk of my presentation. I went through that a lot quicker than I thought. So Vicki, do we have an option for questions, or is the webinar one direction?
Yes, people can they can either post questions in the chat or raise their hand and I can unmute them to talk. Okay, looks like we've got two people who've raised their hands. Let me pull that up. All right. Jason, I'm going to allow you to talk here. So you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jason McDonald. I'm the operations manager for Healy Lake Village. And first off, I'd just like to say that we were one of the communities that were accepted in this program last year, and it went pretty well. And I do appreciate all the work that you guys had done and helped us kind of stumble through this. I know it was kind of a learning curve on both sides. My question, though, is about the paperwork or the forms that you had just showed. Are we going to be using your forms then this year? Because last year it was just kind of, whatever seemed to kind of work best. It was kind of a transition throughout the season. So are you wanting to use these timesheets and the work logs, inspection logs, and all that sort of thing?
Hi, Jason. Thank you for the question, and it is good to hear your voice. I know we've emailed a lot, but I don't know that we've met yet.
No,
So my short answer is they're not required. These are suggested templates for how to document the work because it will gather the information we need to do the reimbursement.
Okay.
If you've already got timesheets that you're using, as long as those timesheets are coming through and they're legible for us and we can easily grab the eligible activities off of them, that's fine with us. It's okay. These are not required.
Okay. Is it okay to ask a second question?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. We received our notice to proceed on February 23rd of this year. And by that time, of course, we had already built the road and all that. Do you foresee the notice to proceed hopefully being earlier than that?
Yes.
This coming season? Okay.
Jason, it's our goal to have that. I mean, in an ideal world, I would love that by like the first week in December, and that even feels late because I know that some folks have freeze overs and everything, and they're starting to, maybe the ice road isn't fully constructed by that point, obviously, but they're doing preparation work and it's eligible. So okay. No, February is like, we want to do it definitely before the start of 2024. It all depends on the paperwork. So how quickly we can get that MOA signed, how quickly we can get a limited waiver of sovereign immunity if that's needed. and that reimbursement rate per mile. So as long as we're clicking along on the paperwork and we get that process quickly, it gets over to FHWA, and that can take, let's just say, an average of 2 weeks, depending on how busy they are and all that. But yes, I foresee us being a lot more efficient this year than we were last year. And I foresee us in the future doing our call for projects a lot earlier, but we got waysided again by a lot of things in our office. So yeah, we're hoping to hit the ground running this fall and have you an NTP date earlier.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, Jason, you're muted again. All right, Jessica Guerin has her hand up and I've allowed her to talk so she can unmute. Jessica, can you
Okay. Yep. It was a new unmute button for me. Thank you. Thank you for this presentation, the opportunity to ask a couple detailed questions. In terms of eligibility, would I be eligible to submit a proposal under this effort as the University of Alaska, or do I need to partner with a community and submit a proposal under that community?
Oh, that's really interesting. I think we'd have to look into that one, because is the university constructing an ice road, or are you looking at planning activities?
It would be part of the eligible activities having to do with monitoring conditions.
On an ice road that's pre-constructed by somebody else, or?
Yeah. Yep.
Huh. Possibly. I think I'd have to look into this, Jessica. Maybe I can get your contact information afterwards, or my contact information is actually at the end if you shoot me an email.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to look into it. I'm not sure. We haven't been asked that yet. And we're still learning.
It's a cool. It's a weird nuance one, and I'd love to follow up with you offline.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jessica.
Awesome.
Okay, does anyone else have questions? Okay, Aaron, go ahead and unmute Aaron.
Hello, I was sent this link. I live in a place that is separated from the highway system by a river. So we as a community would be more interested in a ice bridge versus an actual ice road. It's a span of about 500 yards. Would we have eligibility through this program? There are roads on either side of the river, just not across. We have a 4-foot railroad trestle that we access, but it drifts in a lot in the winter and the ice doesn't freeze the way it used to. So I'm just curious if a bridge is eligible instead of a road.
Well, that's a great question, Aaron. I know we had this question last year and we determined, and based on that community, we had determined something similar and eligible, and I'm gonna have to look up the wording on that. But if you can also shoot me an email offline and give me some more details about how the bridge is constructed, what materials are used, is it, are you looking for I'm guessing not a permanent fixture, right? It would be a temporary fixture for just winter season?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, if you could send me some information. We do say that part of our ineligible activities are improvements to access, improve access to the road outside like 300 feet of the waterway embankment. But you're saying a bridge, so let me look into this. I'm not sure, but if you don't mind shooting me an email with your contact information, I'm happy to look into it and get back to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, anyone else have any questions? All right, then we can wrap up a little bit early. Thank you, Sarah, for this presentation. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording.